Did you know that there have only been 2 English Bonsly cards? Or that this Raichu card was never meant to have a pre-release stamp? Oh, you do? Good, because I've been researching for many days to bring you 20 obscure Pokemon card facts that you definitely don't know. From uncovering a hidden 30-year Pokemon tradition to finding out certain cards are objectively incorrect, and coming to the realization that certain cards are much darker than you might think. So let's begin. Ever since the first World Championships back in 2004, participants have always gotten a promotional card for playing. These normally aren't competitively viable, and act as more of a prize card for qualifying. That will look nice in your binder. There have been different ones for each year, including 5 different names, all of which have different artworks, that are normally related to whatever city the World Championships are being held in. We have had Tropical Wind, Tropical Tidal Wave, Tropical Beach, Champions Festival, and Paradise Resort. But upon looking back at these, I noticed something very odd. Something I really wasn't expecting to see. You see something featured on the artwork of every one of these World Championship promo cards, from all the way back in 2004 to 2022. And it's something I was a bit shocked by. Have you noticed it yet? Every World Championship promo card has Psyduck on the artwork. I was stunned by this. Like, normally I would expect a Pokemon like Pikachu, Eevee or Charizard to be featured on these kind of cards. But nope, little old Psyduck has managed to weave his way into them all. This on its own is pretty mysterious. But believe me, it doesn't stop there. Because I mentioned that this tradition goes all the way back to 1999. And the first World Championship promo was given out in 2004. So what about the prior 5 years? Well, I did some more research. And I found that Psyduck is hidden away in another area of intense Pokemon competition. Pokemon Stadium was a game released all the way back in 1999, and it was the first in a series of strictly competition-based Pokemon games, where the RPG elements were removed, in favour of just battling. Pokemon Stadium was no joke, as it harbours some of the most difficult and sometimes unfair challenges to ever be put on a Pokemon game. One of those challenges is the Gym Leader Castle, a grueling 37 battle gauntlet that pits you against gym trainers, gym leaders, the Elite Four and the champion right at the end. So as you can imagine, this is a very time consuming process to do. But when you do finish it, all the Pokemon you use will be entered into the Hall of Fame. That's where you can relax, right? Well, wrong. You see, if you got all 151 Pokemon registered into the Hall of Fame, you'll be given a very, very special prize. But this is no easy task, and it can honestly take ages. So what is your reward for this monumental task? For at minimum completing 962 battles? Well, no other than a gift Psyduck. But this Psyduck is no ordinary Psyduck, because this Psyduck knows Amnesia. A move that it didn't normally learn back in 1999. So I'm not sure what it is about Psyduck, but he always seems to inject himself into the highest level of competitive Pokemon. And he seems very good at it at the very least. And it looks like he'll be there for the foreseeable future too. Now this is a funny one. Cedric Juniper was a card printed in the Legendary Treasures expansion back in 2013. And you would have thought, since Cedric is Professor Juniper's dad, he would be good at drawing a silly amount of cards, right? Well, kinda, I guess. It was a supporter card that made you select a Pokemon from your hand and put it face down on the table in front of you. You then told your opponent what Pokemon you selected. They then have to guess that Pokemon's height. If they got it right, they could draw 3 cards. If they got it wrong, which let's face it, they normally would, you get to draw 3 cards. Now drawing 3 at the time wasn't very good, so this card saw no competitive play at all. It was just a meme. But that didn't stop Pokemon from doing the absolute unthinkable and banning old Cedric for the World Championships. Why did they do this though? Since cards that get banned in the Pokemon TCG have to do very silly things, like stopping your opponent from evolving as early as turn 1, or eliminating a win condition from the game entirely. Well, you see, Pokemon were worried about the language implications this card would cause at the World Championship. Since there will be players from all over the world competing, and Pokemon names are not standardized across all languages. So if a Japanese Pokemon asked me to guess the height of a Pokemon and I had no clue what Pokemon they just said, well, I'd be at a very serious disadvantage. So that's why I got banned, making it the worst card to ever catch the ban hammer from Pokemon. This next one might be my favourite obscure secret in this video, because it took me absolutely ages to research for it. And to be honest, I stumbled on it completely by accident. But I managed to spot a massive mistake on a Pokemon card's artwork that goes against 20 years of Pokemon lore. Let's dig in. So ever since Gen 4, Game Freak started to introduce gender differences to certain Pokemon. These result in very slight but noticeable visual differences to a Pokemon's design. For example, a male Venusaur seed at the top is spiky, where a female Venusaur seed is more round. Or a male Pikachu has a smooth tail, while a female Pikachu's tail is notched. Some are a lot more obvious, like Pyroar and Combee, for example. But for the most part, these gender differences can be very hard to spot. But this got me thinking. From all the Heracross cards that I own, I don't think I've ever seen a card that showcased a female Heracross on it. I mean, the difference is very obvious, since a male Heracross and a female's Heracross horns are very different. So I looked at every Heracross card printed, and my hunch was correct. There has never been a Heracross card that features a female Heracross on it. So that got me wondering, out of all the Pokemon that have gender differences, how many of them are both depicted on Pokemon cards? So I went and checked all 100 of them, and here's what I found. From the 100 species of Pokemon that have gender differences, 28 of them, the investigation was inconclusive. The differences were too hard to tell from the limited artwork on the cards, so we'll just put them to one side for now. That leaves us with 72 Pokemon species to look at. Of those 72, 37 of them featured exclusively male Pokemon on all of their cards. This includes Pokemon like Gyarados, Cacturne, and Beautifly. And that left 25 Pokemon species that have featured male and female Pokemon across their cards. This includes species of Pokemon like Jellicent, Unfezant, and Lumineon, leaving the remainder 10 other Pokemon species that showed exclusively female Pokemon on them. This includes species like Garchomp, Ludicolo, Meganium, and Bibarel. And while this is fun to look at, I wanted to draw some more conclusions or fun facts from this data, and I found a couple. So first up, the only female Pikachu to ever be printed on a card was Pikachu Libre. We can tell by that notch on the tail right there. I thought that was pretty fun. Every Dodo card has depicted a female Doduo, but every Dodrio card has featured a male Dodrio. You can tell by the colour of their necks. But then I thought to check the trainer gallery Pokemon cards, and boy, I was glad that I did. So like I said before, the Garchomp line always depicts female Garchomp, since none of the Garchomp have a notch on their tail on the card's artwork. This is true for this Garchomp V card that depicts Cynthia on it too. So I thought to check, well, is Cynthia's Garchomp female in the Pokemon games? And it is, so that checks out pretty cool. But then I saw that Steelix's gender difference is the amount of external teeth that it shows. Male Steelix have 2 sets of teeth, and female Steelix have 1 set. So after that, I went to look at the Steelix card from Cosmic Eclipse, which depicts Jasmine with her Steelix. And look, it clearly has 2 sets of outer teeth. So my next thing to do there was check her in-game team from Heart Gold Soul Silver. And would you look at that? Her Steelix is female. That categorically means that this card is wrong, right? That categorically means that this card is wrong, right? Well, to be honest, I knew that my job wasn't quite done, because the Steelix depicted could be from her Gen 2 team, you know, the original Gold and Silver games. And lo and behold, the Steelix in that game is a male one. So dream over, right? Well, not quite. I definitely was not done. All I had to do was somehow prove that the Jasmine depicted in this card is from Heart Gold Soul Silver and not the original Gen 2 games. I had no clue how I was going to do it, but I had to try. So I looked at this card closely, but nothing was really jumping out at me. I was close to giving up, but then I noticed something. Jasmine's bow on this card is orangey. So I went to check her sprite from Heart Gold, and yep, the bow is orange. So all I had to do now was check Jasmine's bow in the other Gen 2 games, and if it was any other colour than orange, I could prove that the Cosmic Eclipse card was wrong. Well, unfortunately for me, it wasn't meant to be, because I can't say in good faith that her bow is not orange, at least from her Gen 2 sprite, because, well, she's covering it up rather well. I was very sad. I came so close, but fell at the last hurdle. But then I thought to check, is there any official artwork of Jasmine from that era? And lo and behold, there was. And I was right. We can clearly see from this artwork from Pokemon Crystal and this artwork from the game that her bow is white. But the absolute nail in the coffin for me was that upon checking Jasmine in Pokemon Masters, which is a game that is well known for being notoriously detail orientated with the Pokemon lore, and it clearly shows Jasmine with a red bow and a Steelix with one set of external jawed teeth, clearly showing that it is a female Steelix. Job done, case closed. This Cosmic Eclipse card is wrong. 100% confirmed. Arceus took a while to get introduced to the Pokemon TCG, but when it did, let me tell you, he started to break all the rules. So in the Arceus set, there was one Arceus card for each type, so 9 different Arceus cards in total, right? One for Dark, Grass, Fire, Water, Colorless, Electric, Psychic, Fighting, and Metal. Well, wrong, because there were 3 level X cards too. These were like another evolution, but you had to evolve in the active. So this left a total of 12 Arceus cards in the set, and these cards were set to break some rules. You see, normally in the Pokemon TCG, you are only allowed to run a maximum of 4 cards with the exact same name. So for example, you can only run 4 copies of Mew V, or 4 copies of Boss's Orders. Arceus, since he is the god, basically said, forget that, you can run as many cards with Arceus in the name as you like, making for some crazy possibilities. And while this is a fun fact, sure, it isn't obscure enough for this video. So then when I was looking at the 12 Arceus cards, I noticed something odd. One of the level X cards had a strange feature on it, something that I've never seen before. And my suspicion was correct too. This card is unique, one of a kind. Can you spot the cool thing? It is the only Pokemon card in existence to have 2 Poke Bodies. You see, back in the day, abilities were split up into Poke Bodies and Poke Powers. Poke Powers was something you had to activate, like Dynamotor for example, and Poke Bodies was something that were always in effect, like Vileplume's Irritating Pollen. And this Arceus card had 2 Poke Bodies. Multi-type meant that it was the same type as the Arceus it evolved from, and Omnipotent, and let's try that again, and Omnipotent, which meant that it could use the attacks of any Arceus in play as long as you had the right energy attached to do so. This was pretty cool. But unfortunately, it never really did much in a competitive meta game. Very fun idea though. But my question to you is, do you think we'll ever see a new card with 2 abilities printed? If I had to speculate, I would think it would be on a Mew card or another Arceus card, as they seem to be the best candidates for such a thing. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Now Pampy is a pretty cute Pokemon, and with 15 cards printed, it has had a good amount of history in the Pokemon TCG. Especially considering that Donphan Prime was a top tier meta deck, and so was Spinning Turn Donphan 2. However, one of these 15 Pampy cards has a very funny error, one that did eventually get corrected, but as far as I'm aware, I think it's the only time this has ever happened on a Pokemon card. Let's have a look. Have you spotted it yet? Let's look at that ability closer. Yep, that's right, Pampy's name is spelled wrong. Not once, but twice too. Now, like I did say, this was corrected in future prints, but the first print runs of Call of Legends were rife with this error, making it fairly common, and pretty funny too. But I think, as far as I'm aware, this is the only time a Pokemon's name has been spelled wrong on a card. One of the more obvious ways Pokemon cards get balanced is by energy cost. If an attack is super powerful and deals a lot of damage, it will normally have a high energy attack cost to help keep it balanced. For example, we see cards like this amazing rare Yveltal having a 5 energy attack cost. This is the highest we normally ever see. Another way cards can be balanced is retreat cost. This is the amount of energy a Pokemon will need to discard from itself in order to swap out of the active position. A 2 retreat cost is the average, but the lower the better, with cards like Mew V Max having a 3 retreat cost, which is the dream. However, unlike attack cost, which is normally capped at 5, retreat cost is capped at 4, right? Or is it? We haven't seen a card with a higher retreat cost than 4 in years. So that got me thinking, has there ever been a card with a retreat cost higher than 4? Well, it turns out there is. 4 in fact. Steelix EX, Mamoswine, Golem EX, and Whirlord EX. All these mammoth Pokemon have a retreat cost of 5. It looks strange seeing all those symbols there, but they definitely are there, alright. Considering Golem EX was printed all the way back in 2003, And the last 5 retreat cost Pokemon we saw was Mamoswine in 2008. I wonder if we will ever see a 5 retreat cost Titan ever printed again. But someone on Twitter pointed out something that tells a story over 2 Pokemon cards, and it's actually what inspired me to make this video. So first up, we have to look at this Octillery Trainer Gallery card from Brilliant Stars. This Octillery saw a ton of play because of its Rapid Strike search ability, which allows you to grab any Rapid Strike Pokemon card from your deck once per turn. This paired extremely well with Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX and Rapid Strike Malamar too. We, however, aren't too fussed about that. We aren't even fussed about the Octillery, to be honest. I need you instead to focus on this person right here. Clearly, this person is having a fun time fishing. We can tell by the smile on their face. But what if I was to tell you that smile will soon be turned upside down? You see, we don't know what this person is fishing for, or even what is in that water below. And we know that there are some very scary fish Pokemon you really wouldn't want to mess with, like Seaking and Lantern. And unfortunately for this person, there is a very scary, violent Pokemon hiding below this pier, waiting to strike. I want you to look very closely at this Basculin card. Now back at this Octillery card. And once again back at this Basculin card. Did you spot it? Yep, it seems like this school of Basculin have been devouring that person's hat. And I'm not sure what it is about fishermen in Pokemon cards, but they find themselves in sticky situations often. Like, let's look at this Jellicent card from Battle Styles. We can clearly see by the expression on this man's face, he does not like what is going on. And it's not hard to see why. Because if we were to look at this Pokedex entry from this Jellicent card, their favourite food is life energy? Well, why are they staring at the boat like that? Oh my goodness. And if you want to see more Pokemon TCG trivia, make sure to go check out Rosan's search on Twitter, because honestly, they pump out a lot. Woo! Well, if you want to cheer yourself up after that, why don't you watch this video here, where I go through the 50 worst Pokemon cards ever printed.